Hello, and thank you for your time today. I want to chat about the next big disruptor. Specifically, I would like to relate this to the market I currently serve, which is optical microscopy. To start, let's break down what microscopy is and how it applies to industrial customers. Microscopy can be found all throughout key markets, typically served by most companies. These include microtechnology, semiconductor, medical device, the defense industry, clinical hospitals, pharmaceutical manufacturers, materials research and manufacturing, scientific institutions, surgery, university research, etc. This marketplace was valued at $7.1 billion globally in 2016. To dive in a little bit more, we can look at the main types of optical microscopy. The three main types of optical microscopy found in these market segments would include stereo microscopes, compound microscopes, and digital microscopes. You can see each of them here on the slide. Starting at the top, stereo microscopes are typically used by operators when manufacturing, performing rework, or production in general, because they allow the user to see depth perception, which is essential for using tools. Compound microscopes, on the other hand, are their higher magnification siblings that do not have the same depth perception. They're used in similar areas, but not for rework, and typically more for research and development and failure analysis, where people want to examine things more closely. Lastly is the new kid on the block, digital microscopes. Although you could add a camera to nearly any microscope, these are unique in the sense that they represent a market shift. The idea of digital microscopy is to enable the user to have little to no training, but natively be able to use the system in a fast, safe, and efficient manner. All units can perform 3D imaging, seen on the right, which also ties in the market shift of ease of use and reliance on software integration with digital cameras for reporting. Now we can look at how the modern day manufacturing intertwines with this idea of make this as easy to use as possible with the ability to easily report and send data. It is no secret that the current marketplace is ever more demanding on the manufacturing process. This includes being even more efficient, implementing practices such as just-in-time manufacturing, Six Sigma, and Kaizen costing. So as a whole, people are looking at ways to reduce human error and manufacturing error. I'm going to argue that the software and digital imaging solutions are a major disruptor in the making due to these reasons. To start, I want to show you a video of a digital microscope and how the typical user can easily come up and use it. So what you see here in the video is that the user is coming in here to easily tilt around and view whatever they want to see. What we happen to be looking at is a capacitor on a board. They can rotate around, and the idea is that it's very image-centric, and you're staring and observing right on the screen. Now that we've seen that, let's look what the major players are and some numbers. The major players in digital microscopy are the Keyence Corporation, Olympus Corporation, Nikon Corporation, Leica Microsystems, Carl Zeiss, and the Hyrox Corporation. Digital microscopy globally is on pace to have a compound annual growth rate of nearly 7%, meaning the market will grow from roughly 216 million today to over 380 million by 2025. These numbers come directly from coherent market insight studies, and I would like to dive a little deeper and look at some blanket numbers from our own organization to compare and contrast. When looking at our compound annual growth rate with respect to digital imaging and software specifically, I compiled some numbers using Salesforce, which showed a 22% compound annual growth rate from 2015 to 2019. What's even more staggering is when you look specifically from 2017 to 2019, the growth rate grows up to 31%. This is much, much larger than the anticipated 7% growth rate and could be a key indicator of what could come next. To get an idea of why this may be the case, we may also want to analyze other relevant changes found within the current marketplace. These changes include more and more software integration and reporting through digital encoding and image capture, but also through making the software more easy to use, but also more powerful and responsive to marketplace shifts. You can see on this slide how Leica's Leica Application Suite software has changed over the last 4 years. Users of the original software would have had to spend much more time and energy on telling the software what to do, instead of where you see the newer software on the right, which is very image-centric with less buttons and more automated encoding, thus eliminating more and more user input and sources of error, which is a big target in industry. In order for the marketplace players to have true global dominance, an increased amount of focus will have to be placed on digital imaging, reporting, and ease of use, even more so than what was already happened. For example, Leica had the same software from 2000 to 2014, with software releases every 6 months. But now, they have transitioned to a new platform with releases every 6 to 8 weeks, effectively a tenfold increase. This is yet another example of just how important software and digital imaging is to this marketplace. You may ask yourself how the current market looks and who is primed to be the disruptor. Turns out that all major players, Keyence, Nikon, Olympus, Leica, Zeiss, and Hyrox, all have their respective products and market share, but none have found that killer product to truly disrupt and dominate the market. Most likely, the major disruptor will be one of these players, due to their brand recognition and focus on digital microscopy. I would see Keyence and Leica as the two most likely, as their focus primarily is on industrial segments listed earlier. These again were microtechnology, semiconductor, medical device, the defense industry, clinical hospitals, pharmaceutical manufacturers, material research and manufacturing, scientific institutions, surgery, university research, etc. I believe this is where the idea of dual transformation comes in. It's not only brilliant, but necessary to implement. Whoever chooses to address this inevitable marketplace shift will have to maintain their core market of optical microscopy with a compound annual growth rate of 6 to 7.3%, but also they must double down on the digital microscopy market. They would do so by again investing and reinventing what the tools that software and digital cameras can bring to the end user. They must also do this in a way that quickly responds to marketplace shifts and requirements, as well as create innovations that surpass each other. The next 3 short clips show another 3D microscope, the Leica DMS 1000, and how easy it is to do X, Y, and Z stitching, but still how far this needs to go in order to be truly easy to use for any user. This first video that you see here is they're going to do something called the Z-stack, which gets, sometimes when you're at high magnification, not everything's in focus, so you're trying to get everything in focus and look at it in 3D. So the user pressed go, you'll see the digital microscope on the left, the image in the middle. We're going to zoom in here a little bit, and then you'll see there on the right hand side that it's showing progress with a bar on the right as well as on the bottom middle. I'm going to fast forward a little bit once we zoom out here just to speed up the process of this. So now that we've zoomed out, we should zoom back in after the crop, and we will see this finish up here. So you'll see we're much further along. We're almost done here at the end. What the software is now doing, again, all automatically, is capturing all of these images. It's then going to analyze these images, and once it does that, again, automatically the user just pressed one button, you're going to get an all-in-focus image here that should pop up on the screen here shortly. And there it is. The next video is that same image that we just took, but you're just seeing some 3D measurements. And then lastly, an XY stitch. So instead of doing it in depth, we're going to go expand an XY. And what you'll see here again, the user presses one button. The software is just going to go in a spiraling fashion outward. Again, doing everything automatically so that the user just comes up to it and gets the results. All right. To wrap up, microscopy is holding its own on the optical microscopy front, but there seems to be a truly disruptive shift in the works in the form of digital microscopy. Grand View Research and Coherent Market Insights both assess the market of digital microscopy and optical microscopy growing at a rate of 6 to 7%. But based on our own internal numbers, digital microscopy has the potential to grow at a much larger rate. Based on our last few years, we have seen growth rates trending upwards of 20 to 30%, which is fantastic and cannot be ignored. I do believe that Keyence and Leica are in the best position to capitalize with their current product offerings, but it would still take doubling down on software and user integration to become a true market dominator and maintain that position. In other words, Judgment Day may soon be upon the optical microscopy world. Here are my references. Thank you for the time, and take care.